You're listening to the Minutes on Growth podcast, the show that brings you mindfully curated insights into relationships, spirituality, personal development, and everything in between, with your host, Tannaz Hosseinpour. Hi, everyone. It's Tannaz Hosseinpour, and welcome to another episode of Minutes on Growth. Today, I have a really special guest with us, motivational speaker and author Michael Arterberry. Welcome.
Yes, how you doing, Naz? So let's get into this today. I want to give a little background of who I am to your audience, and then we can get into your questions. That's good?
Yeah. Let's dive right in.
All right. So, I like to tell this story to set up my podcast interviews because I think it relates to all that we're going to talk about. And it's about a farmer and a donkey, Naz. Now, this donkey is one of the farmer's favorite farm animals because after he finishes working on the farm with the farmer brings the donkey back home and he allows his kids to play with the donkey. So imagine when the donkey and the farmer come down the driveway, the kids come out the house, they run out, they play, they wash, they ride them, and then the farmer releases the donkey back out to the farm. And this is like a normal ritual, all right? So one night he brings the donkey home, the kids come out, they play, they wash, they ride them. He releases them out to the farm, but the next morning, Naz, when he comes out to get the donkey, he whistles, the donkey doesn't show up. So he starts walking around the farm and he's trying to find him. He finally hears the donkey making donkey noises at the bottom of an empty water well. See, during the night, the donkey was wandering around and he fell into this empty well. So the farmer sees him at the bottom of the well. He wants to get him out, so he goes and gets 6 of his friends. He brings his 6 friends to the well. They look into the well, and they're like, how are we going to get him out? So one of his friends suggested that they get some rope and pull him out. So now as they all get some rope, and they start throwing the rope down. They miss him, they throw it, they miss him, they throw it, they miss him. Then finally, they throw the rope by his hind legs. He steps into the rope. They shimmy it up his body, and they start pulling. They pull, the donkey moves. They pull, the donkey moves. Then all of a sudden they realize, Naz, that the donkey is too heavy. So when they realize he's too heavy, they lower him back to the bottom of the well. And now the farmer has to make a grim decision. Now see, the farmer can't feed him food at the bottom of the well because that wouldn't make any sense. The farmer can't starve him because starving him, in his mind, he's more like a pet. He can't starve him. And one of his hot-headed friends was like, hey, just shoot him. He's like, no, I can't shoot him. So one of his friends came up behind him and whispered in his ear. And he said, listen, you don't want your kids to fall into the well. So you're going to have to sacrifice your donkey. We're going to cover him with dirt and your kids will be safe. So the farmer said, you know what, I can deal with that. So now I said, all got shovels. And they start shoveling the dirt. And every time that dirt would hit the donkey, he would scream. And every time he would scream, it would cause the farmer some distress. So you got dirt, scream, dirt, scream, dirt, scream. Then all of a sudden, the scream stopped. When the scream stopped, they gave the donkey a moment of silence. But then they got back to work. More dirt, more dirt, more dirt. The next thing you know, Naz, you see his right ear. They're like, whoa! So they start shoveling faster. The next thing you know, you see half his body. They start shoveling faster. The next thing you know, that donkey walks right out of the well that he fell into. Now check this out, Naz. Every time that dirt came across the wall, it would fall on his back. He would shake it off and he would step on it. And he took every scoop of dirt that was meant to kill him to save his life. Now check this out. I tell you that story because I am the donkey. What do I mean that I'm the donkey? Is I'm going to share some of my dirt with you, all right? I grew up in a home with a raging alcoholic father, and he raged from the time I was born until the time he died when I was 16. Now think about it. Growing up as a kid, I could get lost in all the fun during the day, but then all of a sudden, something would tap me on my shoulder and be like, hey, buddy, don't get too happy because you got to go home to that raging alcoholic dad. On top of living in a home with a raging alcoholic father, I grew up in poverty. Both my parents worked full time, but my dad's money went to drinking, and my mother raised 4 kids She was a housekeeper. She cleaned people's homes for a living. And last but not least, I grew up in dysfunction. You know, when you got a father who's an alcoholic and he's trying to raise us in an environment like that, it was crazy. Some of the stuff I endured in my home, you can make Lifetime movies. It was that really, really that bad. But the reason why I do what I do is because I was able to take my wounds, my scars, and my resilience is what pushes me forward to help people to achieve what I was able to achieve. And so I do what I do because of what I've come through. And I just wanted to put that out there so we could set up the table so you can now ask me some questions.
Wow, like I have goosebumps hearing that story and then hearing your story. First of all, thank you so much for sharing your story and being so vulnerable with us. I love it when men, show this side of theirs because, growing up, we always kind of silence men and we are like, don't talk about your story and don't talk about your emotions and don't talk about life. Just work and do what you're supposed to do. So I love this freshness of your vulnerability and really, really thank you for sharing that. And the story was so powerful, like beyond powerful. And I understand now why you do what you do, which brings me to my first question is, when did you know that you wanted a different life for yourself?
I had different phases, but one that's significant is when I do my talks in person, I use a slideshow a lot of times, and I show a house that I grew up in. And if you see it from the outside, it looks condemned. So when I put the picture up, you hear the whole audience gasp because I tell them, I'm like, the way you see it on the slide is exactly the way it was when I lived in it. Now, I say this to you, Naz, because I remember in the wintertime, we rarely had heat. My mom used to heat my apartment up by putting water in big turkey basin pans, and she would boil the water, and the vapors would create the heat in the apartment. Now, I'm telling you this because one night while I was falling asleep in that house, and it was cold, and I'm crying in my bed, I was maybe about 7 or 8 years old, I made a promise to myself. And I said to myself that when I got older, my kids would never, ever have to live in this house that I live in. And so as I started to strive in my life to achieve my goals, and any time that I got to a place where I felt like I wasn't going to be able to make it, my unborn children became the catalyst to my push. And what I did is I wanted to make sure that my generation after me, I broke a cycle. So my generation beyond would not be would not carry on that poverty mentality that I was passed by my own bloodline.
Wow. Wow. So powerful. You said, break the cycle. At that age, how did you have the awareness that that's what you wanted to do?
Well, the blessing in disguise is the fact that I was unable to go to school in my school district because I had to go to school where my dad drove the bus because I didn't have a babysitter. So I grew up in the ghetto, in the hood. So I didn't go to school in the hood. Where I went to school was in this affluent neighborhood with people with money. So I was exposed to an environment that was totally opposite of what I was growing up in. And so I feel sorry for kids in my neighborhood that didn't get that opportunity because their vision is so short-sighted because of the only things that they got to see. But I got to see homes and people living a different way. So as I was striving to go for it, it wasn't really like a far-off dream. I was able to see it. I tell a story about how, like in kindergarten, I'm on the bus and I'm driving to school. I'm not driving, my dad's driving to school. And I'm on the bus and it's crazy now because I'm big enough where I can see over the seat and I'm watching the houses change. So when you leave the ghetto, the houses are like mine, but as I got closer to the school, the houses are raised ranches and then some mansions. And what's beautiful is the house that I live in now, it's just like the houses that I used to stare at when I used to be on a bus as a little child.
So powerful, Michael. So powerful. Wow. Okay. Tell me this. Willingness is one part of the equation, of course. We always have to have this desire within us to want better. And of course, you had the awareness because of the opportunities. And so both of them together were very powerful. But without inspired action, taking action, I don't think you would be where you are today, correct? Like, correct me if I'm wrong.
Now I'm following you.
What inspired action steps that you take that you feel changed your story?
You know, what I did to protect myself first and foremost is in that toxic environment, I created a traditional family. Another blessing was the fact that I was an elite athlete. So my mom wasn't into counseling because that's not part of the African American culture. So immediately she got me into sports at the age of 8. So from 8 until I graduated high school, I played basketball, baseball, football, and soccer. And I rotated those 4 sports to the point where when I got to college, I could have gone to college for all 4, but I picked football. But when I say I created the traditional family, my coaches became my fathers because they were my male figures. Then my players on my team became my brothers and sisters. And then the positive accolades I got from being a superior athlete was what you would normally get if you walked in a house with functional parents. And so I had this protective bubble, even though I lived in this toxic environment that constantly fed me what a child would get in a normal, traditional family. And so that's what was my push. So I was able to come home to that madness, but stay on target. And what I realize now that I do to help with young people is that my teachers would pick up on that I was different. I never got hit with what goes on in your house, but I would always get just a little extra here and a little extra there. Now with social media and Facebook and they see what I do, they start coming around and I remember them. I remember the ones that, they say to me, I didn't know what it was, but I knew there was something that you were struggling with. And can I tell you this, Naz? What's beautiful though is I did it with a smile. So my friends, when I do my public speaking and I wrote my book and they hear how the adversity that I came through, the first question they always say to me or the statement they make is like, yo, but you came to school every day with a smile on your face.
I was just going to say, actually, that's the remark I was going to make. I was going to say, you did not get stuck in victimhood mindset and consciousness, right? So you created an alternative reality for yourself with your teammates and your coach. And I think that's a really heightened level of awareness for someone that age. So I honestly applaud you for literally pulling yourself out and saying, this is not how my story is going to be. And I'm not going to sit down and mope and, say, it is what it is. I'm going to actually do something about it, which is so inspiring. I love it. Okay. You say the change is in the show up. Can you expand on that?
Right before COVID, I went to a branding conference in LA. It was wonderful. It was 3 days, I think, 3 days. And it was to teach you how to brand your business. And, we get in a room and on the way there, I felt inspired on the plane. I'm all hyped up because I'm going for my business. I did a video. I'm on my way to California to this branding conference. And the video just flooded my social media. I got people that were talking about, I have schools in Cali, hook up with me in California. I was getting business back at home just from this video on the plane. And so I got to witness that. And then I walk into the branding conference and he says something similar to the changes in the show up. But what it is he's saying me showing up at the conference, just being there, I got the fruits of it. So I say the changes in the show up because I do a program that once it gets out in the building to the students, they're a little apprehensive because they hear their kids cry. So they like, oh, if you go to this program, you'll cry. And so I put it out there that the changes in the show up, because sometimes if you overcome fear and you just allow yourself to step into the realm, you're able to get what is supposed to come to you if you didn't do it. You know what I'm saying?
I love it. I love it. I mean, showing up to your life and taking action, actually, right? So you took action. You became really intentional with your life. I agree completely with you. I love it. Okay, so you say that it's important for us to be the driver and not the passenger in our own life.
Right.
How do you explain this to teenagers?
Yeah. So check it out. So let me fix it. It's my tag. So Naz, it's be the driver of your car, not the passenger of your car. So this is how I break it down to. We are products of our thought lives. So I explain that to them. And what I explain to them is the fact that as human beings, it's already a challenge to think of yourself on a positive level. But then I take it a step further with them. I say, listen, you struggle on an individual level, but then you have people that don't help you. And they'll say, who are you talking about? I'm talking about your peers. It can be family members, aunts, uncles, cousins, brothers and sisters. In some situations, it can be mothers and fathers. And what I explain to them is, if you allow your negative thoughts and the negative thoughts that are projected on you to control your life, you become the passenger of your car rather than the driver of your car. And then I tell them a quick story. If you don't mind, I'm going to tell you the story, Naz. My daughter, when she was 4 years old, she came down to, my wife brought her to my man cave where I watch football. And she comes down and she gets on my lap and I'm playing with her and she's going to bed. And then she goes back to my wife. And when my wife is about to pick her up, I say, good night, beautiful. Now, when I say that now, she looks up at my wife and she does the happy there. And she says, did you hear what daddy just called me mommy? He called me beautiful. So that's a nice situation. But now I'm talking to teenagers, right? So then I say, but check this out. What if when she came downstairs, I said, good night, ugly. Or when you didn't I tell you about not bringing her downstairs when I'm playing a football game? And this becomes a rhetoric that she gets exposed to now. 4 years old, 5 years old, 6 years old. And then I bring it up to the age of whatever group of teenagers I'm dealing with. And then I ask the group, what do you think she looks like? And they'll say she's dark. She has low self-esteem. She has poor relationships with people. And then I ask the kids, I'll say, hey, listen, if she's all of that, who's driving a car? And they'll say, her dad's driving a car. And I'll take it a step further. Nas, I'll tell her she can go get married, have a husband. I'm still driving a car. She can get married, have a husband and a baby. I'm still driving a car. And I explain to them, Nas, that until she takes back her keys, I will drive her car to eternity. And so I explain to them that when they get into a situation and they feel like they're not in control, they got to take back their keys and become the driver of their car.
Wow, I love it. And it's the way you created that scene and that imagery. I think it's so powerful, especially for teenagers, because I think at that age, a lot of teenagers think, A, the world is against them, and B, life is unfair sometimes. And sometimes they also think that they know it all. So it's like a mixture of all of these emotions that some of them contradict one another. And then here you come and you give them, a new way to look at life and to look at their own life. What has been the feedback that you've received from teenagers? Do they have aha moments with this story? Like,
Girl, don't even get me started. Listen, I started in 2008. I've been doing this a long time, and life changing. I tell people all the time, that my program is not a program, it's an experience. I've taken young people, like I had a young lady who came from a family with 4 generations of no one graduated high school. So imagine when we're talking about role models, 4 generations, nobody made it out of high school. So that's what she's living in. But she came into the program and just got filled with inspiration that she was the first of 4 generations to graduate high school. You know, when I went to a graduation, I was sobbing like a baby, because when she walked across the stage to get a diploma, no one in that room knew but me, or maybe her family members, what she went through to be able to grab that. You know, I had a young man who was a gangbanger. Imagine he comes into my room, and I do all of my activities in a circle. He comes in my room, he's rough, he's got the grill on, his arms are folded. And as we start going through the material, you start watching this hardened teenager start to get softened. But then check this out now. This may make you cry as well. But check this out. So we get to a part, it's a 2-day program. So on the second day, and he felt comfortable to say, he says, yo, this is the first time I've ever been someplace that not only do I feel welcome, but I feel loved. Now, this is teenagers. Don't you know, they stopped my group. I was kind of not upset, but I'm like, what are they doing? They all got up. Nas, they went over and they hugged him. And each time a person hugged him, he broke down. But the last person, he was a puddle. The hard rock, the kid with his arm folded, was crying like a baby. So when you ask me the feedback, I watch kids transform in front of my eyes.
Wow. The power of love and community, like the right community, can really create miracles. And now that I think of it, like even teenagers that, exactly as you said, some of them, have closed themselves off to the world because of their beliefs and perceptions of the world and, of their environment. They too crave this type of support. They too want to be seen, heard, and appreciated and valued. And I mean, the work that you do is phenomenal. Like, wow. I've had goosebumps this whole time. It's honestly so inspirational, and I love it. What would be the one piece of advice you'd want to give to every single teenager out in the world?
This is not to all teenagers. This is for your listeners who are adults as well. I wrote a book called Be Encouraged. And on like the 3rd page, I wrote this. And it's short-term thinkers plant gardens. Long-term thinkers plant trees. Eternity-minded thinkers plant themselves in the souls of others. So what do I mean by that is this, Nas, is you have to make all your interactions with other people intentional. Anytime that I set out to speak to somebody, it's intentional. And what I mean by that is when I leave somebody, Nas, I want to walk away and have them say to themselves, like, who was that guy? Who was he? What did I just get touched with? And if each individual were to move and maneuver through life in that way, think of the essence that we could live in.
I mean, you've definitely left me feeling that way. So you're an embodiment of what you're writing and preaching, which is just so wonderful. I love that. I love that you mentioned the importance of getting intentional with our thoughts, our actions, and our day-to-day behavior. And now more than ever, we need this reminder. So thank you for that. And thank you for sharing your story. And thank you for all that you do. It's been an honor having you on.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I had a great time.
Me too. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon. Thank you for joining us this week on Minutes on Growth. If you enjoyed today's episode, then make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.